Welcome to Hope Unabridged. I'm Kasey Brennan.
I'm Angie Elkins.
And today we are continuing our conversation from the last episode with Rebecca Bender on human trafficking. Yeah. There's just been so much goodness in our conversation. I mean, we could honestly go on forever. So let's get right into it.
So I'd love to kind of transition and let Kasey ask you a few questions about how we can do our part on our end.
Yeah. How can we protect our kids? That's a really big looming question. Like I ask that every day, honestly, because
for real.
I mean, our kids are being marketed things. Like, I mean, it's just, there's so much out there. And when they are away from us or at school or with peers, and that starts to infiltrate too. And I just, what are things to look for and how can we protect them?
I mean, I think you'd be shocked what's on the internet right now, right? Mm-hmm. And I'm not just meaning even though you have probably parental filters on your kids' tablets or on their phones, even regular items that aren't being filtered. We were watching just some little cartoon on YouTube the other day with my daughter, and we have parental filters, and up popped a trailer for a new movie about a girl whose brother has a sex doll. And I thought, why? I'm watching with my 8-year-old little girl a normal YouTube video about dogs, like a Secrets of the Zoo type of show. That wasn't exactly it. I don't want to throw that show under the bus, but we love animals, which a lot of National Geographic with her. Sure. And a regular trailer for a little girl whose brother has a sex doll. And I just was like, what is happening right now?
Right.
And with our culture being infiltrated with hypersexuality. And so my suggestions, if you want to keep your kids safe, are a couple things. Elementary school and predatory behavior is different based on the type of criminology that targets elementary age and younger children. The type of criminal behavior that targets middle school kids are very different than the type that target high school and young adult college age kids. And I think we all picture the predatory behavior of elementary school, and then we apply that to teach all of our age kids. And that's just not true. Yeah. Right? Because what I teach my 5-year-old is going to be very different than what I teach my 20-year-old. Sure. It just is. And if we're only picturing human trafficking as being this one way of, kidnapped little kids, like I said earlier, you're going to miss the other ways that kids are being groomed in not only other age groups to be victimized, but the way our culture is grooming our young people as a whole, young boys included, to think this is normal. It's sex dolls are normal. Yeah. Going to a strip club on your 18th birthday has somehow become our American cultural rite of passage. Hiring someone in prostitution on your bachelor party becomes this joke that people make in classrooms and locker rooms, and it's all of it. So I think learning to have really open, healthy communication about sex in general, especially about commercial sex in a culture. We're being really naive as Christians if we're just going to put our head in the sand and pretend like our kids aren't going to learn about commercial sex as they get older. Yep. So who do you want your 15-year-old to have a talk? What's a sex doll that they saw this trailer for? Who do you want them to have that talk with? You and your husband or the other kid at school?
Right. Exactly.
Think about that. And so if you're not cultivating an atmosphere where you guys can have some open conversations and dialogue, they're not going to ask you about it. They're going to ask someone else. So maybe you bring it up instead of waiting for them to come to you. You talk about, things that you're seeing online, things you're hearing about. Do they have questions? Or even saying, I know this is going to be super awkward for all of us, but I need you to know that I want you to talk to me because your friend doesn't probably know either. I think it's really important.
I think one of the things that we said to our kids early on when we were talking about these topics, I remember saying to my son, I know it's super awkward for you to talk to me about this. It's not awkward for me. So even though it probably was, I just told him it's not awkward for me. It's not even weird. So just come to me and let go. Just kind of let go of that awkwardness because you're right. I mean, my husband and I want to be the one that we want to be the ones that teach them. Mm-hmm. So tell us a little more about kind of in our community. Do you know where the most trafficked cities, like where in America are the most people trafficked?
Traffickers target anywhere where large populations of men congregate, right? Okay. And so you're talking about anywhere and everywhere. The human trafficking hotline is not a good indicator of high cities of exploitation for several reasons. One is it's a call center. So when you see largely populated cities show up on a call center map, we see those increase when there's a big training because people are now thinking about it. So it's a number that indicates calls. It's not the number that indicates verified cases of trafficking. Okay. And there's lots of cities where trafficking becomes bigger and there just hasn't been a ton of training. So you don't see that pop up on the call center as much. An example would be Sturgis, right? Sturgis in the motorcycle rally in the Dakotas is huge for exploitation. And it very rarely shows up on any call center because it's a one-time event and there's not as much training put into Sturgis. But I think anytime you're going to see large groups of people, we've interviewed, and we have a Mythbuster campaign that just came out. One of the people we interviewed on that has done what they call reverse outreach to people that are trying to buy, and they've interacted with over 200,000 buyers in America. And a lot of them, the ads that are being posted online by traffickers are targeting nearby places of business. So imagine whatever the big company is in your town right now, right? Maybe it's, I don't want to throw companies under the bus because they don't know. But most people that are buying are calling during work hours from work phones and work computers. And the traffickers are putting the ads to say within 1 mile of insert company name. Wow. And so people don't realize how frequent and prevalent it is. But to one of your other questions in terms of keeping our kids safe, what I would encourage parents to do with young, elementary age and younger, definitely be thoughtful of your parental filters. Traffickers are coming in through gaming chat rooms. Boys and girls are on games like never before. And keep in mind that predators are attracted to where kids hang out. And I'm not talking about traffickers, I'm talking about buyers in this specific, moment. So be really thoughtful around gaming apps, around social devices, around your technology is the number one way that someone's going to gain access to your kids. But more than anything in person, parents of young children need to be thoughtful around who's grooming them, who's grooming the parents.
That's so important.
Because it's going to be, unfortunately, it is oftentimes we see the parent has gained relationship with a neighbor or a coach or a teacher or a youth pastor. And because that's where predators try to get jobs and infiltrate industries in which they have access to children, now what they're doing is they're saying, they've gained relationship with you and your family, and now it seems normal to take your kid to ice cream. But that could be very well where they end up sexually abusing, grooming, pushing a boundary a little farther, putting a hand on someone's leg as a child. It's not so sudden. And I think that's the other thing we have to talk to our kids about. Good touch, bad touch, good picture, bad picture. Those are all great resources for parents of young children. Online, putting on your parental filters. Those would be 3 things I would really suggest, even middle school and under. Above that, it's going to be the kids being pressured by their friends, by someone they think they know and trust. Almost every case that I've worked, someone has met them through social media, TikTok, Snapchat, Facebook, Instagram. Traffickers slide into your DM when they see a young teenage girl that's posting provocative photos or talking about how mad she is at her mom, and the trafficker slides right in, and the trafficker is always available to talk. Always can spend lots of extra time. And that's something we talk about often, right? As advocates, I don't have 24 hours to sit on the phone all night at 3 o'clock in the morning and make you feel loved. But guess who does have time? Trafficker does. He's going to make you feel very loved. It's kind of thinking through all of it.
Rebecca, I want to go back just a bit to when you said you went back into trafficking. And I think it's important, maybe even if somebody's listening that is in that cycle of how do you break out of that? Because it's almost like a domestic violence, like a domestic abuse, you know, and you might go to treatment facility after treatment facility. And then a week later, you find yourself back, even after feeling renewed and refreshed. And so what does that look like? Like, how can we help them break out?
Yeah, it's so true. I mean, you know, the power and control wheel that we learn about in domestic violence is a very similar power and control wheel to human trafficking victims. And I think that brainwash is so incredibly real. People don't think about that. They picture kidnapping because it's easy to imagine. Mm-hmm. It's harder to imagine somebody who is slowly having their ideologies replaced with a new set of beliefs, and that it's slowly indoctrinated in them through rewards for cooperation and punishment for non-cooperation that are not always physical. You know, one of the that we lived with, she was forced to go live in the legal Nevada brothels as a form of punishment. Wow. If she didn't obey the rules in the home. She couldn't, quote unquote, come home. And then you think about it, if any one of us obeyed a rule, you would sometimes be rewarded with a night off the next day, or to take this one on vacation because she obeyed the rules this month. And we do that with other things we train, right? We do that with potty training. I know it's not a best analogy, but it's like I've potty trained 4 kids now, and when she goes potty, she gets an M&M, you know, and similarly with other things, with pets. This is how we train pets. We give them treats when we want them to obey. Brainwashing is very real, and it's harder to teach your kids, especially the older kids, you know, 14 to 24. That age group is really at risk for cultural peer pressure and a lot more slow, gradual expansion of boundaries and increase in trust from potential predators. Younger kids, parents need to watch for who's trying to connect with them and their online filters, but older kids need to be talked about, you know, healthy sexuality, how to engage in a world that's really full of commercial sex, and how to know when their boundaries are being pushed. One of the things we even talked to with my older daughter, we would help her actually role play what to say if she's at a party and something's happening she's not comfortable.
That's great.
Because it's not going to always be from A to Z, right? It's going to be the slow, gradual. Let's just go do this in our bathing suit. So let's just go. It's much smaller. And if they get a prick in their conscience, I don't feel comfortable, something's not right. Yeah. How do we teach them to get out of that immediately, not just look for stranger danger?
Yeah, that's incredibly important. And I'm going to take a hard turn here, but I want to break down another myth of Wayfair. It's been in the news a lot lately, and I know you've been very outspoken about how they're not actually part of the sex trafficking world. Can you please explain that?
Yeah, I mean, there's so many myths online right now. I think we're being inundated with items on human trafficking I've never seen in the 12 years I've been doing this work. And a lot of it is not accurate. It's not rooted in any verifiable data or research. We actually have interviewed and talked to investigators that spawned a Wayfair investigation because of public outcry, which found no evidence that any of this took place. Wayfair is a third-party hosting platform, just like Amazon. Right. And so what one potential marketer was doing with expensive items actually is no verifiable. That actually showed a lot of algorithm connection, that expensive items were being named after people after names specifically in your community. So the algorithm were choosing product names based on what's most common in your zip code. People didn't get that. And with a huge amount of missing children every year, of course, there would be similar names matched, but just no verifiable proof other than one person's opinion originated on a Reddit article is what came from that. But even more so, I would just even further pull some of that thread on the missing children. We're seeing this hashtag Save Our Children everywhere. And I think what people are doing is they're not understanding the differences between, child abuse as a giant umbrella. Underneath that, there's child sex abuse. And then underneath that, there's a variety of other categories. There's what's called internet crimes against children. That's what's also known as then a second category called sex tourism, which we see a lot in overseas. And then there's child exploitation, which is not trafficking. And then we see child trafficking. But what's happening with social media is it's like you see one ad of one thing and everyone's balling all five of those categories and calling it trafficking when that's not true. And whether it's internet crimes, sex tourism, exploitation, or trafficking, predatory behavior varies based on crime. And so we're just not knowing what to look for. And we're not reading some of the reports. We see another thing where people have been saying there's 800,000 vanished children. That's simply not true. There's been no report of 800,000 children. A lot of people are quoting Global Missing Kids, which cites that 450,000 children are missing in the United States, which if you actually click that footnote and read it, the very first paragraph says, that report was put out by the NCIC, which is assesses number of times a file was accessed, not the number of files. And in that very first paragraph of the NCIC report, it states that out of those 450,000 accessed files, 33,000 were missing children, 96% had already been recovered, and 0.1% was stranger abduction. So like people aren't clicking the footnote and reading. It literally took me less than 3 minutes to read that opening paragraph to know, wait, it's not 450,000 missing children. There's 33,000. 96% of those have already been recovered. We've got to stop just regurgitating something that seems this sensational headline. Because it's just fear-mongering, it's spreading and furthering misidentification. It's not helping, it's undoing the work that advocates like me have been doing for a decade. And it's hard for people to sort through, it's hard to get real tips. We got to be more thoughtful, we have to be wise as serpents and harmless as doves. We have to be, especially nowadays more than ever.
So if we suspect something, maybe we see something in our neighborhood, like what happened to you, or maybe we see just an odd situation, what do we do?
I think it's always important if you see something, say something. I'm hopeful that what people have learned today is going to give them a couple more red flags on how what to see. You don't just want to see an Instagram post of a really sensational statistic and reshare that. We want to see people in our community, if you see something that looks suspicious, always call that in. Either report it to the human trafficking hotline, which you can just Google human trafficking hotline. I know the number by heart, but you might not remember it right now. I will say it now, but you might not remember it. So just Google human trafficking hotline, report it. Those tip lines are sent to specific human trafficking detectives in your community, which you're not always going to get if you just call 911. You're not going to be dispatched immediately to the human trafficking detective. That's just not how it works. Calling the hotline, they'll get the information to the proper places. And also just being really thoughtful around, child abuse in general, right? This isn't just about trafficking and having elite people, this is rhetoric of like elite people are keeping kids in basements. We need to be a lot more worried about child abuse in our own communities. There's a lot of operations that are ran for internet crimes against children. And it's shocking to see how many people in communities are trying to purchase photos of children from parents on a regular basis. That's who's at risk. I mean, for me, it's not just about the trafficking, it's about all of it. We've got to be diligent to look out for everybody. You have to learn how to keep your kids safe. And even more so, we have to learn how to raise our sons. Because men that are at that level where they're trying to buy pictures of children, where were they as little boys? How did someone talk to them about, the porn that they might be being shown at school when the parents aren't around? It's all of it. It's not just like keep your little girls safe. I hope people right now might be like, gosh, get over it. But I just think it's important because you hear trafficking and you protect your daughter. And we're forgetting that there's a demand that is fueling the trafficking itself. And we need to focus on that just as much.
Totally. Rebecca, one last question. This is a question that we ask all of our guests. And where are you finding hope these days?
I meet so many incredible advocates that are boots on the ground doing this work every day. We're seeing women get their children back. We're seeing young women get into college. We're seeing people that are coming out of horrible childhood abuse that are turning their lives around. They're breaking generational cycles. They're getting married. They're having kids. They're getting great jobs with benefits. There's so much to celebrate that, like, yes, this bit is hard. But if you don't see the bad, it's hard to celebrate the win then, right? Like, knowing that what God took me from is what those who've been forgiven much loveth much. But if we forgive, the forgiven part is hard to talk about, but that loveth much comes out of knowing what you've come out of. You know what does that make sense?
Absolutely. Yeah, that's
people
beautiful.
That are putting themselves out there, doing the work, getting involved with nonprofits, having hard conversations like this, risking, viewership or unfollowing. But, I think people are starting to stand up against injustice in so many forms. And I think that's beautiful. And I think fighting justice is the heart of God, right?
Absolutely.
Mercy, justice, it's what he wants us to do.
Yeah. So I know there are people listening who want to start hearing your voice on a regular basis about this topic. So tell everybody how we can follow you and stay connected to you.
You can go to our website, RebeccaBender.org. All of the social buttons are at the bottom. So whether you're a Facebook or a Twitter or Instagram person, they're all down there. We also have a newsletter you can sign up for. We're putting our Mythbusters out there. We've got a great ebook on 7 myths about trafficking. We cite all our sources. We get you to the experts. And we have a really fun Find Your Lane quiz right now. So if you take kind of like a fun personality quiz, and it tells you what type of lane that your personality might fit in terms of fighting trafficking, whether that prevention and education or awareness or intervention, restoration, policy reform, demand. So many ways to fight trafficking, and we want to plug you into where your personality and your skill set fits. So take the quiz, and we send you all the info on how to do that.
Thank you so much. This has been so informative, and I could probably talk to you for 2 more hours because it's just
for sure.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah. Thanks for sharing your story. It's so important. And thank you for being a voice in this fight. As the rest of us are learning about it, I'm just thankful to have you as a friend and to be able to hear what you have to say about it. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for having me on.
You're welcome.
That was, I could talk to her all day.
I know. So many questions.
Yeah.
Right.
I still have so many. We're going to have her back.
Yeah, let's do. For sure. She's just so well-informed, and I love her advocacy. I think it is the perfect example of how God takes ashes and makes beauty from them. And when you hear her story and what she's been through and how she has completely turned it to help probably thousands and thousands of women all over the country, it's amazing.
And I hope it makes people more aware that, the person sitting next to you in your college class could be being trafficked, like sitting next to you. That's just mind blowing to me.
Yeah,
I mean, how many years was she in that, living a normal life?
Right. It's shocking.
Yeah.
But so thankful for her voice. So thankful.
Me too.
Thanks for joining us today on Hope Unabridged. We'd like to remind you, if you're watching us on Good Life 45, you can also listen to these episodes everywhere you listen to podcasts. If you're listening and you would like to see the filmed version of this show or any of our other shows, check us out on Good Life 45 or on our YouTube channel and our app.
We hope that something you've heard today really blessed you, and we would love for you to share this show with those that you love. Just hit that share button on your podcast app or on YouTube and send it to a friend. With this program, we are finding hope in the unedited stories of our lives, and we want you to do the same.